Lord, we come before you today. Please be with us as we open your word once again. We want to learn how it is you deal with your people, the church. We also want to learn the history of Moses and the children of Israel. So please teach us today as we open your word. We're going to do some review today. We know that the children of Israel, boys and girls, were on the move again. They had encamped around Mount Sinai for about a year. God had given them the law, and now they were on the move. The Levites carried the tabernacle on their shoulders, and the whole camp followed the cloud as it led them for 3 days north across the wilderness. Now they had seen God prove his faithfulness many times. He had opened the Red Sea. They had crossed on dry land. He had fed them manna every day for months. And they'd also seen that he had been faithful when they fought the Amalekites. And they had still not learned to trust him, though. It's amazing. He had given them water in the wilderness. People of little faith. Now, they began to murmur and complain again. Isn't that sad? They were in the new campsite grumbling. Oh, the desert's hot. We're not very happy here. We should have never left Egypt. And they grumbled and complained to Moses. And God heard the grumbling and complaining and got very angry. And he had fire break out, and many Israelites were killed. But of course, Moses cried out as he usually does when they're in trouble. He cried out to the Lord in prayer, and the fire stopped. But again and again, they complained. They complained about the food. We're tired of manna now. We want something else. We want meat. Oh boy, if we only had meat. We should have stayed in, they just fell back on the same thing. We should have stayed in Egypt. They forgot about the cruel taskmasters, the heavy workload that they had. They didn't have freedom. That they didn't remember these things that God had rescued them from. Well, again, Moses cries out in prayer, and God sends them quail. I'll tell you, boys and girls, isn't God good? He gave them quail. They flew into the camp. They gathered so much quail that in a while they got sick of it. It lasted for a couple of days. They were able to grab the quail, but they got so sick, some of them even died. They just gorged themselves on this quail. They weren't satisfied with what God provided, and sometimes we aren't either. And we begin to, God gives us his word, and we can worship him and come, and he will feed us spiritual food, and yet we're not satisfied with that. So we turn on the TV and we look at other things, and we get a little sick, especially in hard times. We notice that our faith isn't very strong. Well, another problem, you might have read about this yesterday. Moses and Miriam were jealous, weren't they? They were jealous of Moses, and they began to cause some trouble, didn't they? The cloud stopped, and Moses and Miriam and Aaron decided that they were going to complain about Moses' wife. Why did you marry this woman from Ethiopia? And God was displeased with that. When he gives us leaders, we should pray for them. We shouldn't spend a lot of time complaining. This really infuriated God. So much so that Aaron and his sister Miriam were called out, and they had to go with Moses outside of, away from the people in the tabernacle. And, God called them Aaron, Miriam. Even with a prophet, I only communicate by visions and dreams. But with Moses, I spoke face to face. I speak to him face to face. He's been a faithful leader. How dare you find fault with him? And suddenly, as they were standing in the presence of God, they broke out in leprosy, white with leprosy. And again, Moses fell on his face before God and called out and said, please heal them. And God did. God showed his mercy. But he did show that Miriam had to go outside the gate for 7 days, outside the tent area. And they had to wait for her before they moved on. God especially wanted her to know, this is wrong. And you can't complain about the leader that I give you. You pray about him, but you don't complain about him. Grumbling and complaining, God does not like. We need to learn that. Prayer, coming to him in prayer with our needs, he does. He's faithful, and he does show mercy, and in his timing answers to prayer. So, boys and girls, we also learned about the 12 spies that went into the land of Canaan. And I'll tell you, God also gave a council of 70 men to help Moses, because Moses was tired at this point of all the grumbling and complaining. But the children of Israel, because of their lack of faith, said, okay, we're just a few miles from Canaan, but we want to send spies in there. So God allowed that, and that there were 12 spies. They went in, and for 40 days they looked around Canaan. There's Moses telling them, go ahead and go into Canaan and bring back a report. Tell us what you see. So they went. The children of Israel had to wait patiently back at camp because they were gone for an awful long time, for about 40 days. And when they finally came back, there was, what they saw. It was a land flowing with milk and honey. They saw so many good things. They brought back clusters of grapes that were so big that 2 men had to carry them. Do you see that? You see all those things that they brought back from the land. And the children of Israel gathered round and asked them about, what did you see? What did you see? Well, 10 of them, boys and girls, as you read yesterday, had a good report. They said, or a bad report, and 2 of them had a good report. 10 said, boy, I'll tell you what, we're not very happy with what we saw. Oh, wait till you hear about it. The people living there are powerful, and their cities are large and very fortified, very strong. We saw the descendants of Anak there. They're huge giants. The fierce Amalekites, they occupy part of the land. The Hittites, there's people called the Jebusites, and the Amorites, they live in the hills. And the Canaanites live by the sea along the Jordan River. These people are too great. They're too mighty for us. We would never be able to defeat them. But Caleb and Joshua, they're the 2 that you're going to hear a good report from. Caleb said, let us go up at once and possess it. We're able to conquer it. And the people, rather than listening to a message of faith, they chose to listen to the 10 who went on. Oh my goodness. We would never be, we're like grasshoppers. We come up to their knees. That's how big these people are. What's wrong with that kind of a report? When God said, I have the land, it's a land flowing with milk and honey. I will be with you. You're going to go in and possess the land. But they listened to men who had a different view of things. Joshua and Caleb were trusting God, their mighty God, with hearts full of faith. And they weren't depending on their own strength. They knew God would be with them. They counted on the promises of God. And they said, yes, there are high walls and giant men, but we must be looking at that. We should look at the power of God and the faithfulness of God. He will bring us into the land. Faith always looks beyond the problem and looks to God. But Caleb and Joshua's encouragement was like falling on deaf ears. The majority of the people believed in the 10 spies' bad report. And they chose to say, well, and they began to complain bitterly to Moses again. We wish we had died in Egypt. Would you bring us out here for? We're like grasshoppers. We don't even come up to the knees of these people. They're going to kill us and our children. Boy, we need a new leader. Let's elect a leader to take us back to Egypt. Wow. So, boy, the unbelief of the children of Israel, very sad. Moses and Aaron fell to the ground. They fell to the ground before the presence of the Lord. And Caleb and Joshua continued their good report. Hey, God is with us. This land is wonderful. Let's go forward. Those Canaanites will be bread for us. That's what Joshua said. And instead of paying attention to Joshua and Caleb, the people began to be so enraged that they were ready to stone them, kill them, throw huge stones at them. Suddenly a bright light flashed out of the cloud in the tabernacle. It was the glory of the Lord, and God said to Moses, how long will these people provoke me? Will they never trust me, even after all the miracles I've done for them? The Lord said, I will disinherit and destroy them, and I will make you and your descendants into a nation far greater and mightier than you are now. But Moses pled for the people. As usual, he said, forgive their sin. Forgive their sin. Your great love and mercy is what we don't deserve, but I'm asking for it. I'm asking for it for the people. You've constantly forgiven us from the first days that we left Egypt. Please do it again. And then the Lord said, well, okay, I'll pardon them as you've requested, Moses, but I declare now they will not enter the land. I declare by my own name that not one person who has seen my glory and the miracles I did both in Egypt and in the wilderness, and still they refuse to trust me and obey me, none of them shall see the land I promised to this people and to their forefathers. Tomorrow you must take them back into the wilderness. Tell them they will all die in the wilderness. Not one of them 20 years old or older will enter. They will die in the wilderness. My word shall go into the promised land. Only Caleb and Joshua will be permitted to enter into the land flowing with milk and honey, and I will bring their children safely into the land. They shall inherit. They are the ones that will inherit the promise. But as for the people, they must wander in the wilderness like nomads for 40 long years. They will not enter the land of milk and honey. So when Moses told the people this, they, oh, no. Okay, we change our mind. We'll go in tomorrow and we're going to fight against the people of Canaan. Moses said, no, don't you dare do it. God won't be with you because of your unbelief. They didn't listen to Moses, and you know what happened. You read it yesterday. They were soundly defeated. And they had to, agree. This is what we've got to do. We've got to just stay in the wilderness, as God has said. Boys and girls, we want to be a part of the promise, and we want to enter that in faith. We need faith right now, don't we? We have a giant that we're facing our country. And how many of you are praying. As a matter of fact, that's what your homework is today. Write out in your Bible notebook a prayer for your family, for our leaders, for our country, for other countries in the world. Pray that we find a vaccine and medicines to take care of people that get sick with the coronavirus. Thank you.